Hello, I'll give it a minute and then we can get started. Welcome. My name is Cindy. I'm here at Russo Law Group, and I'm happy to welcome you to our webinar entitled Medicaid Made Simple: What You Need to Know for 2026. Today is February 12th. Welcome. So this webinar will last 30 minutes. It will be recorded and a copy of the recording will be emailed to you. Your microphones have been muted for the remainder of the presentation. Please feel free to chat amongst yourselves in the chat box and submit your questions in the Q&A box. Deanna will address them at the end of the presentation. As always, we value your feedback, so please fill out and submit the survey that will be presented to you at the end of the webinar. I'd like to present Deanna Abley. She's a partner here at the firm. She has 25 years experience in the practice areas of elder law, trust and estate planning, Medicaid planning, and special needs planning. She's a member of the New York State Bar, the Nassau County State Bar, and the Nassau County Women's Bar. And with that, Deanna, I'll pass it over to you.
I would have been okay if you said over 20 years. When you get to 25, it sounds like a lot. Thank you, Cindy. I apologize for those of you who have to listen to this voice all day, for the next half hour. I have a little bit of a cold, but that's the joy of having kids who bring it home to you. So today we're going to talk about Medicaid, and the wonders that it is. We're going to do an overview of Medicaid and what services they provide, eligibility, how one becomes eligible, some of the changes that are very recent. They came about in December, very end of December. And then we'll just wrap things up and summarize basically everything that we had discussed. So, Medicaid is often used for long-term care planning. Um, just so I know I'm going to go into the two long-term care aspects of Medicaid here, but just so that you know, there are other components of Medicaid. Most common one that is also out there is the Affordable Care Act. So it's Medicaid on the marketplace, which is for somebody who otherwise doesn't have insurance and they need some kind of insurance. And so, like Child Health Plus, Family Health Plus, those are Medicaid benefits to have insurance when you don't have any other insurance. But the two that we're going to talk about today are community Medicaid and nursing home Medicaid. Community Medicaid is also long term, but it's care services in your home. While you're home, someone comes in and provides those care services for you. And it also is, you often hear that it's for personal care needs. You hear the terminology CDPAP used every once in a while with regard to this. And you will also hear about MLTCs when we're talking community Medicaid. Nursing home Medicaid, as many of you know, it's institutional and it covers skilled nursing facility needs. And there are differing rules and planning considerations when we're doing long-term community Medicaid versus long-term nursing home Medicaid. All right, so let's start with community Medicaid. Community Medicaid often is for individuals who are over the age of 65, individuals with disabilities, individuals who are chronically ill and need long-term care services. They require assistance with activities of daily living, which I'll get into in a minute. And the key features are that they provide care in the home and they support aging in place and help to delay or avoid institutionalization. But the question you have to ask is, I often get is, all right, ADLs. Well, what are ADLs? Activities of daily living are often the things that we do most every day and don't even think twice about it. So you're talking about getting dressed, bathing yourself, going to the bathroom, eating, transferring, like just the simple act of getting up out of a chair and walking down the hallway, getting out of bed and walking to another room. If somebody was having issues with continence, it would also cover the issues that they're having with continence. So, when we talk about requiring assistance with activities of daily living, there's two things to know here. One is that if somebody, if the individual looking for community Medicaid has a dementia diagnosis, then they're only required to need assistance with two of those activities. If there is no diagnosis of dementia, then they are required to need assistance with three of those activities. Obviously, the more assistance that you need, or the more prolonged assistance that you need, the more hours you're likely to qualify for. One very important thing that you should take away from this particular discussion with community Medicaid is it is not easy to get 24/7 care. 24/7 care is often for individuals, in my experience, individuals who have are bedbound and need turning and positioning every 2 hours so they don't get bed sores. Or I have also seen it in instances where somebody needs to have they've got a history of they have a history of urinary tract infections, and the continence issue becomes a problem because they're having major issues with the urinary tract infections getting so bad that they keep getting hospitalized. And at the end of the day, those hospitalizations are causing delusions, and there's major issues there. But 24/7 is not something that is easily obtained, especially as you start to get further out on Long Island. Think in terms of workforce, and as you're in the city, the workforce in the city is the workforce in the city has public transportation available to them on a regular basis. So they could take a bus or a subway pretty easy. Whereas as you start to get further out on the island, even though there's bus service and trains out here, you generally have to be able to, once you get to the bus stop, you have to you have to get somewhere from there. So oftentimes that's an issue. Two of the programs that are also offered under the Community Medicaid umbrella is you see, you will hear people at times talk about CDPAP, which is a consumer directed program where you're essentially acting as the agency for your loved one. And so what happens is the agency, you will get the aid, you'll be responsible for getting the aid and making sure that there's coverage if the aid isn't there. Um, yes, family members can be paid under Medicaid rules for that service. A spouse cannot be paid, but children or grandchildren or any other loved ones can be paid to for that service. The other program that's out there that is not it is not often referred to as an option, and it isn't something we talk about enough. And unfortunately, the way the laws are right now, they are capping the number of people that are allowed to be in this particular program at any given time. But that program is often known as the NHTD program. So it's a nursing home skill level program that allows for somebody to get services in their home with the higher skill level of nursing home care. Like they need that higher skill level, but they're safe enough to be home and get it at home. And that requires that you go on you get approved for community Medicaid, and then this nursing home diversion program is a waiver program that you do. Once you get the community approval, you can then apply for that waiver and have services that way. So, how do you apply? How do you get those benefits? Currently, and I say currently because we really are waiting any minute now. The monthly income should change, but currently you're allowed to have income of $1,820 plus the cost of any supplemental insurance premium that you may be getting. So if you're paying for AARP, GHI, Blue Cross Blue Shield, you can pay for them in addition. I would not drop them because if you end up needing to do hospital for a couple of days and then go into a rehab facility for a couple of days, you do have the benefit of, if your supplemental insurance pays for it, you do have the benefit of them covering you for a maximum of 100 days, depending on when you went in, how many days you were in the hospital, and whether or not you had it's a new spell of illness. When I say $1,820, the question then becomes, well, what happens with the excess income? Because some people do have more than $1,820. You have two options with the excess income. So let's say in our example, you have $2,820. So you're over by $1,000. One option is to take that $1,000 and pay it over to Medicaid as a spend down. And when you pay it over to Medicaid, they'll use that $1,000 first before they kick in the first penny, and you get your services. The second option, and the one most likely used, especially on Long Island, where our living expenses are so much more expensive than other parts of the state. Um, you can use something called a pooled income trust. A pooled income trust is a trust that is established with a not-for-profit. There are roughly 22 or 23 that have been approved by New York State Medicaid. And you could go to our website and search pooled trust, and you'll get a whole list of them. And the pooled income trust, what happens is that $1,000 in our example, you'll give that to the pooled income trust company, and then you could submit bills to them that are your bills, as the applicant Medicaid recipient, you could submit your bills to them and they will pay bills for you. So easiest ones are HOA fees, your cable bill, your electric bill, your water bill. If all of that is in your name, those are bills that you could submit because a lot of those are budgeted bills and it requires less paperwork. But you could submit other bills like your credit card bills and stuff. The issue with the credit card bills, they scrutinize them a little bit more, and they do ask for receipts to show what was purchased, and they want to make sure that the purchase was for you. So if you have an aide living in the house, you technically can't pay for food for her. You could only pay for food for you. And so with higher scrutiny, I'd rather use my $1,820 to pay for my groceries and use my pooled income trust to pay for the things like my electric bill and stuff like that. There's currently no look back period for Medicaid home care, but most of us would tell you to do a 3 months worth of documentation. Why do I say that? I say that because Medicaid currently will allow for retroactive coverage back 3 months if you were eligible for benefits in that 3 month time frame. So we supply 3 months worth of documentation so that we could prove that you're eligible in that 3 month time frame, and they'll retroactively cover what they can. So in the community world, it's usually if you had bills with a home care provider that was had a contract through Medicaid, you could take those bills and seek some type of reimbursement for them. If you know that you weren't eligible because you transferred assets the month before you were seeking Medicaid and you just wanted to give the 1 month of documentation to prove that you were below the asset limits, that's fine. You could do that also. There is a rule out there right now on the books that has not been implemented yet where Medicaid is supposed to be imposing penalties for transfers of assets over a 2.5 year time frame prior to you needing home care. It has not been implemented yet. There is no indication when it might be. And you'll stay tuned, keep in touch with us. We send out emails. It'll be on our website. We'll probably have a webinar if and when it does change. But I assure you that there's lots of advocacy in the with the Bar Association, trying to get them to repeal that implementation date or when the change of the rules. The asset limit for to qualify for Medicaid a couple of years ago, we were excited that they raised the asset limit again. So when I started 25 years ago, it was like $3,000 or $4,000, and it would go up small increments. About 5 or 6 years ago, it went up to no, actually in 2008, it went up to 13,000, and we were all excited. And about 3 years ago, it went into the 30s. And so at the end of the day, this year, this is this year's number. At the end of the day, it's $32,532. And that is checking, savings, money market, cash value of any life insurance policies, any brokerage accounts. Um, those are all counted assets. They also look at the value of your home. So when they look at the value of your home, they're looking at the equity value. So if there's a mortgage, it's minus whatever the outstanding mortgage is. You could technically be on Medicaid and have a home that has equity of less than 1,130,000, and you would still be eligible for benefits. As an attorney, I would tell you, even if your house is worth less than the $1,130,000, I would still highly recommend that you meet with me and we discuss how to properly protect that asset. Because even though you're entitled to be on Medicaid with that home equity threshold, Medicaid can also still put liens on the property, so you get the benefits. But when the house gets sold at some point after your passing or entrance into a nursing home, now one, if it gets sold and then you go into a facility, it's cash, and now it affects your ability to qualify for nursing home coverage. And two, if they put liens on the property, which they're allowed to do, and they often 6 months in will do something like that. If they put liens on the property, which they do usually do more so from a nursing home side of things, they could get reimbursed for services that were paid when the house is sold, and you don't want to have to lose the equity value. That is oftentimes what clients will say to me. I have this equity and I would like my family to inherit that. So before we go on to nursing home, I know that there was one question about just clarifying about the law changes. The law changed in April of 2020. It's on the books to say that Medicaid home care will be subject to a 2.5 year look back for to impose penalties. Penalties are just saying that there's a threshold of how much care one would be able to get and what the cost of that is. And if you give money away, you gift it to somebody in that 2.5 year time frame, then they divide by what the average cost of care is, and that number that they come up with is the number that they use to say, well, as a Medicaid organization, we're not going to pay for services for X number of months because you had money and you gave it away. That understand that even though it's on the books, it has not been implemented. Medicaid is a federal program that has a state component to it. In order to change the in order to change the Medicaid system, they have to get a waiver signed by the federal government. When the law was changed, on the books, it was during the pandemic. We were in a public health emergency. In order to maintain the federal funds, we were not allowed to do anything with the Medicaid program in that time frame to make it more difficult to obtain or maintain services. And so that waiver is still on someone's desk waiting to be signed. It has not been signed yet. So the law did not take effect. It has not been imposed. We are trying to get them to repeal it before it does get imposed. And at some point, when it comes into effect, if it does, we will let you know whether or not it's retroactive or whether or not they're going to give us a date. Because originally, when they set it up, they were going to start implementing in October. So they notified us in April for October. It has not been implemented yet. It is not a rule that you need to worry about at the particular moment, but you do need to know it exists. And at any point, it could be something that we're discussing more fully. Okay. On to nursing home coverage. So, if for some reason you're in a position or your loved one is in a position where it's just either too unsafe to be home and they can't stay home anymore, or I mean, I see it so much so often where the loved ones are not taking care of themselves because they're spending too much time taking care of, their spouse or somebody else. And now the well spouse is becoming sick because they're not taking care of what's going on for themselves because they're taking care of their sick spouse in particular. So if someone needs a nursing home because that's just the most appropriate place for them, one, just know that it's not the end of the world. At the end of the day, you want to just know that, like I often tell clients, when a parent sits in a room with me and their children and says, "Do not ever put me into a nursing home," I always say that's not fair to say to your kids because sometimes it's just safer for you there. And sometimes it's better because they need to be your kids and not your caretakers. They need to be the ones who are advocating for you and everything as your loved one and your kids. And you don't want them to start resenting you because they're constantly on call and being the caretaker. You want them to be your advocate and your child or your spouse or any number of those things. So don't put that guilt on anyone. My mother's trying to guilt us that way too, and I have to keep putting her in check. So who does the nursing home serve? Individuals residing in a licensed nursing facility can be covered by Medicaid, and Medicaid becomes a primary payer once that they are eligible. Okay. So just know that I wrote myself a note and Medicaid is the payer of last resort. So initially when somebody goes into a nursing facility, if they've had an opportunity to go into a hospital first, they had 3 days admission in a hospital, and then they're going into a nursing facility first for rehab. First, you're going to have Medicare covering, possibly a supplemental insurance premium, an insurance coverage if you're in a plan that covers it. Your income comes first. So Medicaid is the payer of last resort when we're talking about long-term care coverage. All right. They have strict financial rules and mandatory asset spend down when you're looking for nursing home coverage when it comes to Medicaid. So the income coverage is $50 a month. Plus, if there's a supplemental insurance premium, you could still maintain that premium. So I usually encourage clients to keep that premium because if you're not paying for the insurance coverage, you're only giving the money to the nursing home anyway. And that insurance coverage may help you, like if you at some point have to go back to a hospital and back to being considered rehab, that supplemental insurance coverage may help you with the in the long run get a little bit more PT, OT, and speech. So you definitely still want to keep that in mind. But you should also know that as much as we are also advocating to not have any changes happen with penalties or anything in the home care world, as an elder law population, we are also actively for probably over a decade now, actively trying to get this $50 a month changed because costs are going up and even $50 a month may not even cover the cost of having one's hair done on a monthly basis. And so right now it's $50. If if you're a veteran or a spouse of a veteran and you can qualify for aid and attendance, that $50 could be $140 because there's a $90 benefit that those individuals are entitled to. And it doesn't go to the nursing home, it goes to the individual. So that's something to keep in mind. From an asset standpoint, you still also have the threshold of $32,532. Again, that's made up of checking, savings, money market, and those items. And you also have the option of still owning the house, but equity has to be under the 1,130,000 for the same reasons that I explained in the previous slides why I wouldn't keep the house in your name regardless of the equity threshold. I still wouldn't keep the house in your name, especially when we're talking about nursing home, and they often are the ones that do put the liens on the properties and they do look to get reimbursed. Nursing home coverage, in order to qualify for Medicaid nursing home coverage, one must provide 60 months worth of banking information. That's every bank statement, every page, even the ad pages. And Medicaid will look line by line every deposit in excess of income, and they really are focusing on withdrawals of 3,000 or more, but do understand that they want to know where the money came from, where the money went, and they are entitled to ask for withdrawals under $3,000, especially if there's patterns in there. So they are entitled to ask for that. If they see that there have been assets that have been transferred out, you gave $15,000 out to your kids for the year. If they see that gifts were made, they will add up all of the gifts that happen over a 60-month time frame and divide by roughly $15,000. That's the average cost of nursing home care in your region. And that number will constitute the number of months that Medicaid will refuse to pay for your care in the nursing home because of the gifts that you made. Now, there's always exceptions. We don't have a crystal ball. We do things 2 years ago that not anticipating that we're going to need care today. There's always ways to deal with those exceptions. Some of the exceptions for both home care and nursing home care are transfers to a spouse, transfers to a child who's disabled, transfers to a trust for an individual who is disabled and under the age of 65. But you do need to know that there are some penalties that could be imposed. And if you have questions or concerns about those penalties and you may be needing nursing home coverage and you want to know what's how to deal with that before you get in the nursing home, then calling and making an appointment to talk to me or any one of my colleagues is certainly the best option because you want to know in advance of anything. But we do have some good news. So Angela, I saw you this morning. This is the big stuff, right? December 23rd of 2025, we got this notice from Medicaid or CMS that said effective immediately, these are the things that are changing in Medicaid. And they are really things that are changing for the better. So, one thing that's changing is it used to be, since Medicaid is the payer of last resort, it used to be that Medicaid would say, hey, before you apply for benefits, we need to know that if you or your spouse were a veteran, that you have applied for veterans benefits to see if they will contribute any money toward the cost of your care. And oftentimes, what would happen is we would go through this process, we would show proof that we submit the application, and then the application would get denied anyway. And so Medicaid came out with this ruling in December saying that we no longer need to provide proof that we have submit an application for veterans benefits for a surviving spouse of a veteran or the veteran themselves. The other thing that was big, and again, another wrinkle in what happens used to happen in the application process is that if somebody wasn't receiving any income at all, they didn't apply for Social Security, they didn't because they didn't either qualify or they were young, on the younger side and they weren't of retirement age yet and they didn't apply for Social Security disability benefits. Medicaid would say we need proof that you're applying for those benefits or we will deny your application. They no longer need proof of that. Okay? You don't no longer have to show that. The biggest thing here, the biggest change that happened in December, and this change will drastically change how people perceive the community Medicaid, I think most of all, is there's no longer a need to maximize retirement benefits. So what does that mean to you? Many of you are familiar with the required minimum distribution from your IRAs and retirement accounts. Required minimum distribution is a calculation that the IRS does to calculate what the government feels you should be taking from your retirement accounts once you hit the age of 73. Because you haven't paid taxes on those funds prior to that. And so they want their tax money. And at age 73, they start mandating that you take money out. So it used to be that the IRS had their table that said, this is your life expectancy. And with that life expectancy, these are the funds you should take out. When somebody was looking for Medicaid, whether it was home care or nursing home care, Medicaid said, that's great. I'm glad you're taking out the required minimum distribution, but we are not as generous as the IRS in your life expectancy. And we want you to use the Social Security tables, which will cause you to take more money out of your retirement accounts. And that more money could protect the retirement assets. So you'll note that in the asset threshold limit where I said 32,000, I often never didn't say anything in the list of the accounts that I was telling you. I never mentioned the retirement accounts because if those accounts were in a proper payout, they count as income. They don't count as an asset for Medicaid purposes. Well, we used to have to maximize that asset by using the Social Security table. So you were taking a lot more money out every year from those benefits, paying more tax on them, but it was protecting whatever was left. In December of 25, the rule came out that we no longer have to maximize those benefits. You just have to be taking something out. So the general understanding is anybody over the age of 73, what they'll be taking out is the required minimum distribution because the IRS requires that. If you are under the age of 73 and you need Medicaid services, then there's a gray area where, in theory, as long as you're taking $1 out of the account, then you could qualify for benefits because there's no minimum requirement for taking those out. Okay. Huge in the planning world. This is a great opportunity because I've had clients who have had to halt on the idea of using Medicaid for home care services, and they've had to privately pay for home care because when they had to switch to the maximum retirement benefit, it knocked them out of the box because it gave them so much income that it was just too much income to have to spend down every month. So this is a huge thing, and I encourage anybody who thinks that that may be helping them get on Medicaid now, call us up. Let us meet with you and do the assessment for you and get you those benefits that you've been paying into for all your life while you were working, and now let's use them for you. All right. So I know that we're going a little over. I appreciate that you're all hanging on. Your takeaway here is that Medicaid home care still is not implementing a transfer penalty yet. So we're still in a world that you could transfer your assets out of your name today and technically be eligible March 1st. There is a process to the application, so it wouldn't be instant, but it would help you get services sooner than later. Um, Medicaid nursing home coverage is still subject to the 60-month look back and transfer penalties, and there's still that opportunity to get retroactive coverage for 3 months. little hint, next year that's going to change, but you don't have to worry about that right now. And the biggest change, the thing that I want you to take away, the most important takeaway for today is that retirement accounts no longer need to be maximized. You could take your required minimum distribution, and that would be sufficient enough to help you qualify for those benefits. And I think that's going to be a game changer for a number of people who have higher retirement accounts and will generate income from them. So I know that there was a lot that went back and forth on the chat. I unfortunately I'm not going to be able to get to everything there. I'll look at the Q&A because there's some three things on the Q&A, and I'll see if I can answer that. Bonnie wants to know, when will you have the new updates for Medicaid on the website? It is under Medicaid 2025 update. So we were just waiting to see, Bonnie, whether or not they're going to change the income threshold, because they have over the last couple of years been giving us the numbers in mid-February. So that's why I say any day now we could get that change. And once that happens, we will update the numbers on our website for you. And the purpose for the Bonnie again is asking, can you please review the purpose of the pooled income trust? Absolutely. The pooled income trust is a way of taking your money in a home care setting. You can't use it. You can't put your income in it in the if you're in a nursing home, but in a home care setting, if your income exceeds what Medicaid allows for income, you could take the excess income, establish a pooled income trust, and pay your bills with that money. The charity will pay your bills with that money. It's a great resource. It's such a great resource that years ago there was advocacy to get Medicaid to actually include that option as in their paperwork that they send out when they approve applications with a spend down, because there was an understanding that not everybody was hearing about that change and that opportunity to be able to use that. But pooled income trusts are a huge, huge benefit for home care when you have very high income. So it lets you keep your money and live off your money, but with a third party managing it for you. Jennifer wants to know, if your co-op apartment is in a revocable trust, is it safe from estate recovery? I heard maybe they don't go after co-ops in New York City. So estate recovery, for those who don't know, is that when someone passes, like I mentioned, if you keep the house in your name, Medicaid has liens and stuff, can put liens on it. Estate recovery is basically saying that Medicaid has an opportunity to come in and pull from that asset. So sometimes it's you died with assets in your name, the will has to be probated, which is taking it to surrogate's court. Medicaid is a creditor. So once you do that, Medicaid is a creditor, they get notice, they get reimbursed. Revocable trusts are a way of avoiding estate recovery. So yes, that is one way that we are avoiding estate recovery. But I personally would still look to try and transfer to an irrevocable trust, because I am much more comfortable with that concept and making sure that there's a guarantee that Medicaid's not going to find a way to go after the revocable trust. But right now, yes, I have many colleagues who are using that. So any other comments that you guys have put in the chat, Cindy and I will go through them and we will try. And if there's questions in there, I know some of it was, I was trying not to read it while I was lecturing to you, but I caught a few of them. And I know that some of them were just looking for clarity on some things and others were just, hi, how are you? So if there were any questions in there and that we feel, needed you to get those answers, we'll definitely respond to you. But Cindy, I think that we're good with the questions.
Thanks, Deanna, for all that information. I also want to note that you'll be presented with the survey at the end of the presentation, and you can also note your questions in there. So I'll pass them on to Deanna, and we can see how, we address them.
Perfect.
So what makes us different? So Russo Law Group is constantly commended by their clients for their dedication, accessibility, and comprehensive legal services, which have brought them peace of mind and comfort. We're a boutique law firm founded in 1985, so we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. We have 3 convenient locations on Long Island and 9 attorneys on staff ready to step in and help at a moment's notice. I'd like you to visit our website, invite you to visit our website at BJR Russo Law, so you can explore our website and our vast library of informational collateral. You can see our calendar of events and what's coming up. You can visit different videos and watch different videos and read our blog posts. I'll also invite you to visit our social media pages where you'll find other informational content. We have a Fact Friday on Instagram, Fact Friday series. We have our channel on YouTube. So please note what we're on and follow us. Thanks again for attending. Please note once again that the survey will come after this screen. And Deanna, I'll pass it on to you to say goodbye.
All right. Everybody, I mean, it's like a balmy, I don't know, 33, 34 degrees out there. So we should all go get some vitamin D and take a little walk outside since it's not cold.
Mhm.
And have a great and wonderful day. And thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye.